Hello once again, everybody. This is my third voice thread for Why I'm Not a Hindu, the book we've been reading in class. And today I just want to talk about a couple of things that I found interesting in the book and things that really struck me and stood out to me as different and things that I think I've learned so far reading the book and the things I expect to learn going forward. First off, one of the things that really struck me reading the book was that the author considered himself not to be a Hindu from birth, and this was for a couple of reasons, but the main reason was because of the religion that his parents and his grandparents had practiced in his village, and the fact that his religion was more localized as opposed to the Hindu religion, which is found all over India. One thing that I noticed about this was that one of his early statements was that he was not a Hindu, but that even though he wasn't a Hindu, it wasn't that he was another religion, such as a Muslim or a Christian, but really that his religion was based off of his community and that he was in a religion where the gods and goddesses were local to them and based on their own needs and their own language and their own culture. And I really thought this was interesting because it's a little bit different than the Hindus we've been learning about before this. Another thing that I thought was interesting was the way he talked about his caste growing up and the influence that his caste not only had on his village and his culture, but also on things like his friends and, of course, his religion. And I figured this would be the case before we started reading, because that's what we've been talking about in class so far. But it was interesting to me to see that he was actually friends with people who were members of other castes, but that these friendships were still based on occupation or their social ranking. And I think this was interesting because I believe this to be more of an example of the more localized level, the viradri that we talked about for the caste system, than the actual caste like Dalits or Brahmins or things of that nature. Because it seemed that each of these people, even though they were from a different caste, so to speak, had a similar occupation. They went about doing things in a similar way. And I think this was one reason where he was able to make friends with them and be able to spend time with them outside of the realm of just bumping into each other in social situations, so to speak. Another thing that I thought was interesting was the way he compared his life and his religion to that of the Hindu religion. And I thought this was interesting because before we read the book, I looked at it more of thinking that it was going to be a critique of the Hindu religion, which of course it is, but I didn't really know what to expect in terms of the author's style or how he would end up going about writing about it. And so to see that he used different aspects of not only the Hindu religion but also his own religion and his own caste culture to make those comparisons was interesting. And I think that is crucial to the reader because it gives them an insight from the perspective of someone outside of the Hindu religion, which is something we haven't really seen beforehand, except for in terms of Dalit Christians. And I think that's interesting because it shows that even though there are similarities between the two religions, and even though the majority of India is labeled Hindu, that there are those out there and who are in India who do not consider themselves Hindu, and they don't consider themselves Hindu for a variety of reasons, whether it be caste education, caste occupation, or caste own caste culture and religion. And I thought it was interesting to see that different villages could have religions outside of the Hindu system and still be classified as Hindu because of their location or because of the amount of people they had of the Hindu religion there. Moving forward, studying this, I'd like to continue reading and really see some more in-depth comparisons and critiques of the Hindu religion, it's interesting to me to see, especially coming from a background of Christianity, which has been qualified as an egalitarian religion where all people are seen as equal uh, in their faith, whether it be someone who's been a member of the faith since childhood or someone who's new to it. Each person is given the same status, and each person is given the same status in a lot of cases in terms of whether or not they have a lot of education, specifically religious education, or whether they have very little. And for me, it's interesting to see how the Hindu system works and how it affects those who do not qualify themselves as Hindu by putting them in caste based on Hindu beliefs, something that I believe is very unfair because it, one, suppresses them from following their own culture and things because they can be qualified in the Hindu system and not even really know what Hinduism is, especially if they're from a rural area, such as the author mentions that his parents didn't know they were even part of a religion beforehand. And another thing that I think is interesting and will be interesting to see moving forward is the effect or the impact that this book could have on the thought of those who don't consider themselves to be Hindus or consider themselves to be left by the Hindu system, and what effect it could have on not only their religious beliefs but their political beliefs as well, because a lot of the political system in India, as we've learned, is based on the politics of religion, the politics of Hinduism, and the different aspects that Hinduism plays into things as simple as purchasing basic goods. And I think that this book could definitely serve as a real wake-up call for that and show those who read it, not only Westerners like myself, but those in India who have access to be able to read this as well, that there are different options for them and different ways of life for them, and the impact that could have on the Hindu system and the caste system as possibly serving as a method to end caste discrimination and maybe move forward as more people come to an awakening point about how a small number of people and their interpretation of religion have impacted an entire cultural system, and how that can be changed in the same way by people interpreting a religious text or a religious critique of a text and see that there are other options for them, and that the same old way of doing things, the status quo, can be defeated. And I think it'll be interesting to see that moving forward.